Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. On today's episode, we're going to be looking back to game week 19, the games that happened, and ahead to game week 20, as well as touching on a little bit about the Champions League. I'm your host, Sam Stattorino.
I'm Izzy, Duddy.
And I'm Jacob Bernstein.
Yes, listener, hello and welcome. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of April, as we're recording today, maybe Wednesday by the time you're listening to this. And we've got two guests on the pod today. I've got with me Izzy Duddy. Izzy, how are we doing?
Very, very well, thank you. Barring the Champions League at the weekend, I am good.
Yeah, we all went to a game this weekend, me and Izzy, both at the Emirates. Didn't have a great time in supporting our team, and our other guest had a similar sort of experience on Sunday. Jacob, how are you?
Yeah, it's becoming ritual for me to come on after Spurs losses. So not great, but we had more fight. So there was some encouragement at least.
You at least got 2 goals, and if it's any consolation, any of the men's fans would be doing exactly the same as well. But yeah, we're obviously just going to be looking at the women's game. Don't worry, we won't depress you too much, Jacob. Yeah, there's a lot to get through today because there's obviously been 5 games in the WSL over the weekend and a little bit last week. There is Chelsea against Crystal Palace coming up tomorrow as we're recording. So if you want to hear our preview on that, you can go listen to last week's pod. It's us 3 plus Tom Marr. And then we're going to have a look ahead to the upcoming game week as well. But like I said, previous game week, let's have a look at that first. Arsenal started off game week 19 with another goal glut at the Emirates on Wednesday night, notching 5 against the Foxes. On Saturday, we had 2 clean sheets, both in one game, as the Uniteds of West Ham and Manchester drew 0-0. The other game on Saturday saw Liverpool overtake Brighton into 5th place as the Seagulls were knocked down in Sussex. Sunday saw Man City finally get a point against Everton this season after losing to them just before Christmas. And there was also a 5-goal thriller between 2 of this season's biggest underperformers as Spurs hosted Villa, and that is where we're going to start today's pod. Yes, listener, it was Spurs 2, Villa 3 on Sunday afternoon. Spurs now winless in 7, getting their 4th home loss in a row, which is the joint worst home form in the WSL alongside Aston Villa, who have now got a decent away form after actually winning another game. Villa and Arsenal are the only teams to have won their last 2 games in the WSL, and it was quite the game on Sunday, wasn't it? I'm going to hand over to Jacob because Jacob was, representing Decoding the WSL at Spurs this week. How was it?
Yeah, I was representing Decoding the WSL, both in the press box on Sunday, but also in the pre-match press conference on Friday. I actually went to the Tottenham Training Centre at Hotspur Way and was able to interview Robert Villahammer, and I started off the press conference on Friday. I got some interesting nuggets. I asked about Beth England's return. She only returned to make the bench on Sunday, but she's obviously had quite a few weeks out through injury. And yeah, he was Robert Villahammer on speaking on Beth England's return, said that she's one of the best finishers in the league. Having her in the locker room and around the training pitch has a big impact on the other players. I also asked him about kind of the positives. This is going back quite a few weeks now to the game against City in March and then West Ham and Leicester in recent weeks. And he said, we're creating chances, we're playing the style we want, but we need to score more goals. And then the last thing that I thought was interesting from the press conference, this wasn't actually a question that I asked, but it was a question when asked about the previous game against Leicester. He said the Leicester game in stats and performance was encouraging, similar to Arsenal's game against Leicester, but Arsenal clinical in attack, which if you take the statement for face value, you may question it because Spurs drew 1-1 against Leicester and Arsenal have just beat Leicester 5-1. But if you actually look at the XG statistics, Spurs in their game against Leicester had 2.5 XG and Leicester had 0.5, but it was 1-1. And then in Arsenal's game against Leicester, Arsenal had 2.9 XG and Leicester had 0.2. So it was actually quite similar, and I thought that was quite an interesting data insight from the manager. But then, on to Sunday's game. as I said, I was in the press box at Brisbane Road, and the first half was very dominant by Villa. They dominated the start of the game and were winning a lot of the midfield battles. I thought a lot of Villa's kind of midfield and attacking midfield, Ebony Salmon, Missy Kearns, and Chastity Grant were kind of winning the midfield battles. There was a nice link-up play. They were intercepting the ball in midfield, and Spurs couldn't really handle them. And Villa scored on the half-hour mark. It was definitely a reward for their good start. A free kick in the box from Lucy Staniforth, headed on by Rachel Daly, whose header hit the bar, and then Anna Patton was there on the rebound. She was literally in front of goal and couldn't really miss and headed it in. And Aston Villa were 1-0 up. Spurs had a flurry of chances between 39 and 45 minutes. We actually had 8 shots, but none of them were on target. They were all like half chances, blocked shots. And within a 5-minute period of the game, so that last 5 minutes of the half, we actually accumulated 0.881 XG, but didn't have one shot on target, which I thought was interesting. And then in the second half, relatively early on, it was 2-0 to Villa. Lucy Parker played one ball over the top. Again, Rachel Daly headed it on, and Ebony Salmon found herself in loads of space, only had Molly Bartred to beat and slotted it home. Spurs' defence was nowhere to be seen. Spurs made 2 subs just after Villa's second goal, bringing on Matilda Vinberg and Beth England, who made her return from injury. And both England and Vinberg were influential, and from those subs, it almost changed the game. Within a couple of minutes, Jess Naz had a shot that forced a corner, and on the resulting corner, Jess Naz scored. It was pretty scrappy, but we got ourselves back into the game. I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. The fact that we were 2-0 down and our goal scoring in recent weeks has been so poor, I just didn't really foresee a comeback. But within 5 minutes of Naz's first goal back, we ended up equalising. Brilliant goal. It was a ball over the top from Evelina Sumanen, and Ella Morris took it in a stride, rounded the goalkeeper and slotted it into the net, which is a reward for Ella Morris's really impressive performances in recent weeks since returning from her MCL injury. You would have expected maybe a momentum swing or a large push for a winner in the last 20 minutes. It was actually relatively quiet until Kirsty Hansen came off the bench and scored her second goal in 2 weeks on 90+1 to give Villa the win. It was a big win for Villa. It puts them level on points with Leicester, and it almost, not mathematically, but it puts Crystal Palace in a very difficult position in their fight for survival. I thought both my standout players of the game were definitely Rachel Daly. While she wasn't as much of a goal threat as we would have thought, she got 2 assists with 2 headers. So using her aerial ability. And I thought Ebony Salmon, even before the goal, I thought she was absolutely brilliant, as I said before. And the goal was almost just a reward for her hard work. Villa have now got 2 wins in 2 after 6 losses in a row. So they're in good form with a tough game against Arsenal coming up. From Spurs' point of view, I'll try and focus on the positives because there are a couple of positives to take, and we haven't had many of those in recent weeks. It's the first time that we've scored 2 goals in a match since January. That was our 3-2 win against Crystal Palace. All the way back in January. Our last 3 results, we accumulated 1.7 XG against West Ham, 2.5 XG against Leicester, and 1.7 XG against Villa. Those are our 3rd and 5th and joint 5th most XG accumulated over the season. So we're creating the chances, and to be fair, we scored 2 goals. So on the weekend we were putting them away, but we obviously had our woes in front of goal recently. But yeah, it's difficult. We're now winless in 7. I had a look at the form table, and we're joint bottom of the form table in the last 8 games, which is basically the second half of the season, level with Palace. And it's a tough run in the last couple of games. We've got Liverpool away, Chelsea at home, which could be the game that clinches Chelsea the title, and then Everton away on the last day of the season. So yeah, I really am not sure where any points come from Spurs' point of view.
Yeah, I think it's, you're fine now that you're safe, because like you mentioned, that win for Villa basically puts Palace down. I think Spurs are 9th now, but it's kind of on goal difference ahead of Leicester and only a couple of points ahead of Villa. I did message you yesterday saying that, I was putting my teams of the week together, which I'll put out after the Chelsea game tomorrow. And I was like, you watched this game better than I did because I saw the highlights of it. Is there anyone that stood out? And yeah, the first thing you said was Ebony Salmon. And probably about half of your message was just about how good she was. Which, yeah, when it comes from a supporter of the other side, shows that she must have been pretty good. I, for one, am just very glad that Kirsty Hansen came on and scored because that's more points in my fantasy team. I did put her on the bench, but I can't remember who it was. I've got someone that hasn't played, so she'll be coming on instead. Izzy's looking like concerned in the corner.
I just never learn. Like, I talk a load of like hype about players like Kirsty Hansen, how great they are for a fantasy team, but when do I actually ever put them in my own one? Never. But yeah, I was quite glad for Ebony Salmon as well. I feel like Villa's kind of stacked with like bright talents who really shone like a few years ago and then went quiet. And I think Ebony Salmon is definitely one of those. I remember hearing about her like a few years back when I think she'd been at over in the NWSL for a bit, and yeah, she seemed like a sort of promising young striker, and then never seemed to get any game time. But maybe this is her renaissance.
I think it's only her second goal of the season this year. I definitely remember the first one. It was against Palace, and it was the winner, which was like an absolute rocket, and I think a 3-2 victory there as well. Obviously, she scored a bit earlier on in this one. I thought probably the best goal of the day, personally, I thought was Ella Morris's. I think for a team like Spurs that are really struggling to score goals that aren't from set pieces as well, to score really good counter-attacking. Yeah, like you said, Jacob, it was really good. She's been so good the last few weeks, hasn't she? Probably, maybe since Christmas. I guess since she's been back from injury, she's probably been one of Spurs' best players.
100%. I mean, with Beth England out, I think, and despite our poor run, I think both Ella Morris and, this may sound surprising, but I think both Ella Morris and Lisa Kopp actually have probably been our standout players. Although we haven't kept many clean sheets, Lisa Kopp's very reliable with saves, and it feels like we have like a very strong presence in goal.
Yeah, I thought she was a bit of a coup when she went to Spurs. I think Leicester had two very good keepers in, and it was sort of, obviously Lisa Kopp was the one that wasn't being selected. Nina Leipzig was the one. So, yeah, I think she's definitely, although, she's not gone up to a Man City or a Chelsea or something, I think Spurs is definitely a really good move for her. And I think it will, over the next few years as well, I think it will show to be really good. Let's move on to some of the other games that happened over the weekend in the WSL. So we'll start off with the one that was in midweek. Arsenal obviously moved their game because they had a match on Saturday as well in the Champions League. So they played last Wednesday. At the Emirates, they beat Leicester 5-1. Leicester can take a bit of solace from this game, I think, in that it's their first ever away goal against Arsenal, at the fourth time of asking. It now puts Arsenal at their seventh win in a row. No other team in the WSL has won more than two in a row. Leicester are still winless away from home in the WSL this season. They've still got a pretty good home form, sort of middle table sort of form. But they've now had 8 away losses in a row. And I think, Izzy, Leicester that are kind of lucky that we've got a team like Palace in the league, because if it wasn't for Palace, they would be struggling and thinking they might get relegated.
Yeah, I agree, and I think obviously that was always going to be a tough match for them, and it is a shame because I think when we've seen Leicester play really, really well when they're at home, and have put on some really good performances, but yeah, they've clearly just been really struggling for the sort of second half of the season, and yeah, I think we will see Palace relegated, but Leicester will kind of have to have a bit of a kick up the butt for ahead of next season, because I think, I was at the Emirates for that game, and Arsenal were expectedly dominant, but I do think that goal they conceded was possibly more of a defensive mistake than it was kind of a super threatening Leicester. So I think, yeah, it's kind of a go again next season for them.
Yeah, I think you can. you can sort of understand from Arsenal's point of view, because I think was it something like half an hour, or it's certainly in the first half, they were 3-0 up, and it was sort of the game looked pretty dead by that point. And I guess when you've got another big game on the horizon on the Saturday, you kind of lose a bit of concentration. And Yuka Mimiki, I thought, took her goal really well. I think she's one of Leicester's brightest players, certainly sort of most creative players. So I'd like to see her do well at least. Although obviously from an Arsenal standpoint, it was nice to still get a comfortable victory and keep up, well, what was a good run of scoring quite a lot of goals at the Emirates. A game that didn't have many goals was West Ham Man United. They met on Saturday. Man United got their third clean sheet in a row as they drew 0-0 away at West Ham. It was nice to see Matt Beard on Sky, obviously out of a job at the moment, the former West Ham manager, off to sort of give some insights and things, especially around some of the manager interviews, which I thought was quite interesting. But West Ham are doing really well. They're unbeaten now in 5 games at home. Obviously, they've got players like Shakira Martinez that are in really good form, but I think obviously she didn't score in this game, but defensively, Jacob, I think they had such a strong game because Man United were the team that were generally on top, but West Ham, I think, might even get top half this season.
Yeah, I actually watched this game. Because the Arsenal Champions League game kicked off half an hour later than this one. I was basically like frantically switching between the two whenever one of them was on, and like it was half time in the other. So I kind of caught all of the West Ham game and then the Arsenal semi final in between. Yeah, I feel I'm. When we were on the pod last week, I said that this was the game that I was most excited for. So of course it ended up being a 0-0. But it was a good watch. I thought the first half was very lively, more lively than the second. United were dominant on the whole. I kind of noted when I was watching it that it was United's right hand side that was controlling the game, namely Jade Riviere and Celine Bizet. They were combining really well and getting a lot of crosses in. And then I kind of looked at the crossing data afterwards and saw that firstly, United made 27 open play crosses, which is the most they've had in any WSL game. And secondly, the fact that the 2 players with the most crosses were Jade Riviere and Celine Bizet with 8 and 7 respectively. And they were able to turn kind of creativity into chances, both of them setting up Elizabeth Turland for quite a few chances. In my thread that I posted on Twitter last week, I noted that 3 of Elizabeth Turland's 9 WSL goals had been assisted by Celine Bizet, and you can see why by watching this game. Turland had, I think it was 3 headed chances in the game, and I think 2 of them were assisted by Celine Bizet. But yeah, United probably should have won the game. West Ham were very limited in terms of chances. One player that I did want to shout out from West Ham, I don't think she'll get many plaudits in the highlights of the game, but I thought she was absolutely brilliant in her kind of attacking play, was Rico Ueki. Again, as I said, she won't get the plaudits from the highlights because there are quite a few instances where she'd pick up the ball and kind of the edge of West Ham's box, kind of take on a couple of players, very skillful. And there were quite a few times where she drew fouls from United players. Millie Turner got a yellow card off the back of a Rico Ueki run. And yeah, for all of West Ham's brilliance going forward this season, it's a shame that we didn't get to see any on Saturday, but maybe I guess that's testament to United's amazing defence. They've now recorded 13 clean sheets in the WSL. So yeah, it was a stalemate, but it was a good game and a big result for West Ham, who have picked up 3 draws against City, United, and Chelsea now.
Yeah, 13 clean sheets is insane. I can't remember how many the most was like the most clean sheets were in the league last year, but 13 from 19 games played is a lot. I think in the Premier League, it's normally about high teens, maybe 20, sort of gets the Golden Glove. So that's what, half the games. And Fantas Joyce has got a clean sheet in more than 2/3 of the games. Yeah, it's looking like it's been a really good season for Man United. And I guess West Ham's still got a really good home record now. Man United have got 3 tough games coming up, but they are still clear of the 2 teams that were, well, kind of fighting for 5th place that kicked off about half an hour later. This one was Brighton 1, Liverpool 2, a really big win for Brighton. For Liverpool, who moved above Brighton into 5th. The last time, or this fixture last season, I should say, Kerry Holland got a goal and a red card in the game, and she was certainly the centre of attention in this game as well. She got 2 assists for Liverpool. First for Olivia Smith, who scored the opener. 6 of her 7 goals this season have been the opener in a game. And then pressing really high, nabbing the ball off Brighton, basically giving the ball away and being a bit slack at the back. And then a nice one-touch finish from Leanne Kiernan to make it 2-1. Brighton have now lost 3 in a row and they're winless in their last 5 games. They started the season so well. They had they had quite a dip after Christmas. They then did well for a little bit, and then it looks like they've just struggled again. But I think if they still end up finishing, they're probably going to end up finishing maybe 7th at worst, I reckon, Izzy. Do you think this is still going to be like a successful season for Brighton? Do you think the fans will be happy with it?
To be honest, I think, they have had a new manager and they made quite a lot of changes over the summer. I think they can take away a lot of positives from the season. And I think, personally, if I were a Brighton fan, I'd see it as a positive. I think it's kind of a sort of building season, if you will. I think the fact that they've been kind of up and down is sort of signifies that. But, they'll get in stronger players. They've got strong players that they brought in this season. And I think they can easily build on that and challenge for sort of a higher position next season. I think it's a shame. I think we said last time on the pod, Brighton on a good day at home, it could be quite a good day for them. But I think when you've got Olivia Smith on your team, and she just loves score, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, what you're going to do is what Brighton, I think, did try to do, and what most other teams have done as well, which is basically just drag her down, chop her down in any means necessary. I think she did end up going off injured, which, isn't the first time this season and won't be the last time in her career just because of the way she plays. It's so hard to stop her by actually getting the ball. So, they're the sort of means that players have to delve to. I did think this was going to be a Brighton win. I thought this might be a good opportunity for them to buck their sort of poor form, but I did say it would be 2-1. So, every cloud, I kind of got something right at least. Another game that I think I said was going to be 2-1 as well was Man City Everton, which obviously wasn't. Everton, I think it was 25 games in a row that they'd lost against Man City until the match they played before Christmas at Everton, which they won 2-1. And then this one was obviously 1-1. So Everton have taken 4 points off Man City this season, which is pretty good going. And other than, I guess the other teams in the top 3, you probably wouldn't say any team would be close to doing that this season. So very well done, Everton, but a really bad result for City. I am intrigued to see what you two think, but I think the top 3 is basically done now because Man City have got 7 points to catch up on Man United with 3 games to go. Obviously, one of those is against Man United. So if that's a win, then it's 4 points in 2 games, which sounds a lot more doable, especially when Man United's games are Arsenal and Chelsea. But with the injuries that Man City have as well, they've near enough got a starting 11 out injured, like a really good starting 11 with Bunny Shaw and Lauren Hemp and Jill Ward and Viv Miedemar. I don't think City have got it in them anymore. I think Man United and Mark Skinner and I guess Fallon Tuller's Joys, let's be honest, have done such a good job this year. I think they've deserved and will probably end up with that 3rd place. Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably too little too late for City to get a Champions League place. I mean, obviously, they've had such a tough time through injury and they've had a recent run of form in all competitions that hasn't been the greatest. Obviously, we got the news of, I don't think it had come out yet, maybe, when we last recorded the pod, of Mary Fowler's ACL injury that she picked up, which, I mean, that brings up a whole new can of worms over the fact that there was an international break so late on in the season at such a crucial point in the season for so many teams. When I spoke to Robert Villahammer at the press conference, he mentioned that both Hayley Rasso and Charlie Grant were out injured as well. So that's obviously they're Australian as well. So is Mary Fowler. There's a lot in that, not just with playing, but also with travelling and the time difference. There's lots of kind of factors involved late on in the season. I think it's obviously it's mathematically possible for City to still get top 3. Their other 2 games, besides from the United game, are Leicester and Palace. So the opportunity for them to get points is there, especially as you said, as United's fixtures are difficult. But I think because of the situation, it will probably be out of reach, and I foresee United getting some points out of their tough games. So yeah, I think it's mission impossible for City, but it's still possible.
Yeah, it's not done, but it's near enough there. But we'll I think the game they play against you, I think it's 2 weeks' time, will be the one that's going to be definitive. And I think by the time that game's done, we're going to know. I don't think it's going to be. I was hoping there was going to be a little bit of jeopardy on the Arsenal Man United game, on the last game of the season, because I'm going to it and I want it to be just a little bit extra, a little bit something more to it. But yeah, I think it's probably all going to be done by then, but never mind. Obviously, the other game this game week is Chelsea against Palace, which, as we're recording, is tomorrow night. Just because we weren't able to record later in the week, unfortunately. But if you want to hear what we've said about that one, go check out last week's pod, as I've said. But before we get on to next week's games, I want to touch on the other ones that happened this weekend, because obviously normally we would just talk about the WSL, but there were 2 WSL teams in the Champions League semi-finals. So I thought it's worth touching on it just a little bit, at least. Obviously, myself and Izzy were both at the Arsenal game, where Arsenal lost 2-1 at home to Lyon. My opinion, I thought that Lyon were probably the better team on the day. Arsenal had a bit more of the ball, but Lyon's chances were much better. De Mornay was really good, looked really threatening every time she was near the ball. And then other than probably Beth Mead and Emily Fox on Arsenal's right-hand side, Arsenal just didn't look that threatening. Even the penalty that Arsenal won was a bit... No one appealed for it. It was Leah Williamson that, should we say, received a fist to the head, and even she just got up and sort of laughed it off. But yeah, VAR intervened as they do, and I think it's going to be a tough one for Arsenal to turn around, because although Lyon famously don't get very good home support, they've still got to go to Lyon and win next weekend. But Izzy, how did you see this game?
Yeah, I think it was disappointing for Arsenal, but not entirely unexpected, just because, I think Lyon defensively are very good. Obviously, Diane, I was actually sitting on the side that she was running up the wing on the first half when she scored as well. And yeah, she's just like, the speed she goes at is just impossible. So yeah, obviously they're packed full of talent. Someone like Ellie Carpenter as well is just so strong and powerful. And I think it was always going to be a really tough one for us, or Arsenal, I should say. But yeah, no, I think I was quite disappointed in, we've come to rely quite heavily on players like Mariona and perhaps Alessia Russo, who were very quiet during the match. Mariona wasn't definitely on her top form, and I don't know if Alessia was still a bit tired and recovering from that injury she picked up over the international break. But it just felt very haphazard, which is never good when you're playing a team like Lyon, who's quite organised. But yeah, I guess if you were neutral at that game, it would have been a great one for you to go to. If you were an Arsenal fan, it was definitely tense and quite chaotic, because I mean that those ref calls, I had no idea what was going on at any given time.
Yeah, I would say that the ref they weren't biased. It was just not very good, and there was a lot of calls where it was sort of like, not sure about that, but it did go for both sides. Arsenal got a penalty out of it.
Absolutely. I think it was just some of the calls, and then to get a penalty for something that no one really. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was glad we got the penalty, but no one seemed to really call for it. I will say though, Arsenal, in terms of the club, put on a good show, and I can confirm they were selling candy floss at the stalls outside, which I picked up, and it was very good. So
I
kudos
missed the
to
candy
them.
floss. It was a good day. I got there about an hour before the game, and it was really busy. And I was quite surprised, because I've been to... I've been to other games before and turn up a bit early and stuff. And it's there'll be people around, but not to that extent like there was. So yeah, Arsenal put on a good show. The pyrotechnics and flags waving around and everything before the game. Just unfortunately wasn't a result to go with it. But at least they weren't the worst, or didn't have the worst result by a WSL team this weekend, because Chelsea, the team that can do no wrong, went to Barcelona and discovered that they're not quite all they thought they were. 4-1 was much bigger of a scoreline than I thought it was going to be. I did think Barca were probably going to win this, but I thought, maybe by a goal, maybe two at a push, and then it'll be really interesting when they come back to, I assume, the return legs at Stamford Bridge next week. But yeah, at 4-1, Jacob, I'm intrigued to see what you think about this, because I think Chelsea have been absolutely unstoppable against near enough every time they've come up against another team from England, and then they've met Barcelona, and it's almost like they've just started playing against someone from the year above at school, and you're like, oh, I'm actually nowhere near as much of a big dog as I thought I was.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it's maybe more testament to the strengths of Barcelona and Lyon than it is to the weaknesses of Arsenal and Chelsea. We've obviously seen Barcelona and Lyon dominant in the Champions League over the years. And yeah, it's a big result for 4-1. We don't see Chelsea. Well, we haven't seen Chelsea lose at all in the WSL this season. So to kind of see it as a 4-1 scoreline is very surprising. Yeah, I mean, as you said, the return legs at Stamford Bridge. So a home leg, who knows what can happen? It's a big ask, but yeah, it's a tough ask for both the WSL teams, especially with Arsenal as well. Arsenal have been so free flowing in terms of their goals, scoring 3, 4, 5 in their WSL matches. So to see them only be able to score one and it be a penalty against Lyon is very surprising. It'll be interesting to see if there can be any turnaround next weekend, or this weekend, should I say?
Yeah. I mean, I like to see the English teams do well, but as much as I'd like it to be an Arsenal-Chelsea final, I think it probably will be Lyon-Barca. I think Arsenal probably got more of a chance than Chelsea at this point, just because I think 3 goals against a really good Barcelona side is, if they were 1 goal down, maybe, I'd probably be saying Chelsea got more of a chance than Arsenal, but 3 goals just seems like too much of a mountain to me. But some other good news, at least, that did come out from, partly from Chelsea, was, I think for the first time that, from what I can gather, anyone on social media can remember, a men's game has been moved to accommodate a women's game. So the Women's FA Cup final is obviously coming up soon. I think it's the end of May, about a month's time, on a Sunday, and it was scheduled initially that Chelsea and Man United's men's teams were going to be playing a Premier League game on that day. That's now moved to the Friday night, so that fans are able to watch that game, then have, well, I guess a day off. I don't know for what reason they've moved it to Friday, not Saturday, but to have an extra day, and then obviously the FA Cup final on the Sunday. I think this is just a good news story all round, don't you think, Izzy?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think there's actually so much still left to do for women's football, and a lot of that does come down to these kind of slightly logistical things like scheduling, and those are things that may not be easy to fix, but they're certainly fixable. And I think as the game progresses on, we'll start seeing more things like this, and more kind of structures put in place with scheduling and other stuff like that to kind of give both men's football and women's football kind of their time to shine. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of, I know certainly at Fantasy WSL, we recently did a survey and we're kind of crunching the numbers now, but we are seeing a huge crossover in people who actually say, I am equally a fan of both, or I love women's football, but I actually also watch men's football. So I think, it's not the case that some people will just want to watch one and just watch the other. So I think, yeah, that's a really positive move.
Yeah, I think one area that I don't see sort of, you see a few things, especially if you follow certain people on social media, they'll say about the types of audiences, this speaking a bit more sort of marketing-y, kind of businessy, but the types of audiences, and that the main ones are people that have got into women's football recently, kind of like since the Euros, and people that are sort of growing up with it. So like children that are seeing the women as role models and their families end up getting into it and things like that. And I think one area that is quite a marketable group that just doesn't really get targeted much is men's football fans that will have an interest in the women's game. I can see Jacob nodding as well, because I think him, similar to me, that I've grown up on men's football. I sort of followed Arsenal women from afar until a few years ago, where I started getting into it a bit more. And now I'd say I watch women's football. In fact, to be honest, at the moment, I probably watch women's football more than men's, partly because of the podcast. But yeah, even if I wasn't, I'd still probably watch them equally and, do fantasy games for both and things like that and take equal interest. I think there is a group there that can be marketed to and can be sort of brought over, not away from the men's game necessarily, but alongside it. Right, that's sort of the football that's happened/happening. Let's get more back onto the WSL and look at the games that are coming up this weekend. So the first game I want to speak about is Liverpool against Spurs. This fixture last season was 1-1. Salim Bazet and Marie Herbinger getting the 2 goals. Spurs have not got a very good record against Liverpool. The last time they beat Liverpool was back in October 2022, and that was only because of a Niamh Faye own goal in the first half. Liverpool have actually never lost at home to Spurs. Spurs have not kept a clean sheet away from home this season, so all of the stats are just looking like it's going to be at least a Liverpool few goals, if not a Liverpool win. Jacob, how are you feeling ahead of this game as a Spurs fan?
That was a brutal setup, by the way, Sam. Just here are all the reasons Spurs are going to lose. Jacob, how are you feeling?
Well, I could say, these are all the reasons Spurs are going to lose. Let's go to the person that's not a Spurs fan. Let's go to the other side of London. But no, I thought I'll go to the Spurs fan first.
On the preview pod that we did last week before the Villa game, I was a lot more optimistic going into it because you've got a home game against a side that's close to you in the league. And obviously we lost 2 days ago. So my optimism has turned into pessimism. I was at the reverse fixture against Liverpool earlier on in the season. I think it was the 3rd or 4th game of the season. We lost 3-2. Liverpool scored a last-minute penalty that was given very controversially. I remember it very, very well. Liverpool have obviously been on quite a good run since their change of manager. They've won 3 of their last 5 WSL matches. And their remaining fixtures are obviously Tottenham at home on the weekend, and then they've got Everton at home and away at Chelsea on the last game of the season. Obviously, that game at Chelsea is a difficult one, but Chelsea may have the league wrapped up by then. So there's a real chance for Liverpool to gain momentum or continue the momentum and end the season strongly and secure that 5th position. Hopefully, from a Spurs point of view, we'll see Beth England back in the starting lineup, which I think will massively influence us. But yeah, I because we've been on such bad form, I don't really foresee that changing. So I'll go with a Liverpool win, regrettably.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with a Liverpool win, but I think with Beth England coming back, I wouldn't be surprised to see Spurs score in this game. I don't think Liverpool are going to run away with it either. I can't see them going and scoring 4 or 5 goals. I think it's going to be 2, maybe 3 at a push, probably at least 1 for Spurs. Izzy, what about you?
Yeah, I think do you know what? I'm going to put my neck on the line and say that Spurs will get a goal in this fixture. But yeah.
That's putting your neck on the line.
I am.
You're going to say that
it's going to be a revenge goal, I reckon. It's going to be one of those rogue ones where they're like, let's just do it. And then they just score and it'll be amazing, but it will still be 3-1 to Liverpool or something.
Yeah, I did see as well when I was sort of doing some research before this, that more than a third of Spurs' goals this season in the WSL have come in the last 15 minutes. So that seems to say that, unless it's going to be 0-0 at 75 minutes, it's a good chance Liverpool might take the lead first and Spurs get a late goal, a late charge, make it interesting late on. Maybe if Beth England isn't starting, she'll likely come off the bench again. That might be the time for her to get her goal. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think we all can agree that it's probably going to be a Liverpool win. But I think it'll be an interesting game, and I don't think Liverpool will keep a clean sheet. Let's move on to two London teams, which is Palace against West Ham. Now, we've spoken a lot about West Ham's sort of good form recently, but they haven't won in their last 9 away games in the WSL, which I think, now that I've said that out loud, might be all of their away games. The last time these teams met was West Ham 5, Palace 2 earlier on in the season. Palace were actually 2-0 up in the 11th minute, but 3-2 down at half time, and then West Ham got another couple in the second half. The last time Palace actually beat West Ham, I had to delve back quite far for this, December 2017 in the 3rd tier, which was the National League. So it's been a while. These are, if you asked me this at the start of the season, I'd have been saying that, by the time we get here, 3 games to go, I think this might be a settler for who might end up getting relegated. But that's not quite how these teams' fortunes have gone. Izzy, how do you think this game's going to
go? I think there could be goals for both sides in this, to be honest. But having said that, I've made no secret how impressed I've been with West Ham this season, and I think particularly their draw against United. Previously, it's been the case that they've been doing well through their attacking threat, but I think their defense is really starting to come on now, and so I'm 100% backing a West Ham win. I think they're in good form. They're starting to play well. Their new players are all excellent that they brought in this season, and I'm just really enjoying their style of play, and I can't help but feel like, Crystal Palace, they've obviously got a tough game tomorrow against Chelsea, and they know they're going to be relegated, so there's that sort of psychological element to it. You've got an informed team playing a team that kind of knows it's going down.
Yeah, I think there's a Palace, all but mathematically, are basically relegated. I think there might be an element in this that Palace know that this is a team they've scored a couple of goals against before. It's a team that don't have a good away record. I think off the top of my head, they've got the 2nd worst away record after Leicester in the league this season. So I think Palace will, obviously it's not that far to go away for West Ham. It's probably one of their closer away games. But I think Palace, if Leif Smerid can do this, I think he might be able to get the players up for it and, get them going out with a bit of pride and really get them up for the game. So I think this might actually be a draw. I'm going to put my neck on the line a bit more having my neck on the line than saying Spurs are going to score. But
I'm just
neck
trying
on the
to
line
add
nonetheless.
drama now.
Yeah, just trying to stir the pot.
Yeah.
I kind of feel mean there saying that I'm going to put my neck on the line and say the home team won't lose. But that is what I think is going to happen. Jacob, how about you?
Yeah, I've also spoken about how impressed I've been with West Ham in recent weeks, picking up such valuable points against the top sides. West Ham won 5-2 in a reverse fixture. They had 5 different scorers in that one. And as you both alluded to, this game could be the writing on the wall for Palace in regard to meaning that they are mathematically relegated. Because I believe if Chelsea beat Palace and then West Ham beat Palace, then Palace will only have 6 points to play for in their last 2 games, and they're currently 7 points behind both Villa and Leicester. So this could be the game that could send Palace down. Izzy, you said it. You said exactly what I was going to say before, and the fact that we've been used to seeing West Ham's strength in attack, but maybe we'll also see their strengths in defence. I think we saw the defensive side of it, especially this weekend. On their attacking side, West Ham only accumulated 0.4 XG against United, which was the joint least XG they've accumulated out of any game in the WSL this season. Before that, they'd scored 11 goals in their last 5 games, so that's just over 2 goals a game. I think we'll probably see West Ham kind of getting back to their goal scoring. I foresee a West Ham win for sure.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something that I saw in Mark Skinner's post-match interview, where he basically said that West Ham didn't really come out to play in that game. They basically just came out to stop Man United doing well, which I think is shown then in your XG that West Ham didn't actually go and create any chances. They were just doing their best to stop Man United getting any, which they did pretty well. let's move on to the next game over the weekend, which is going to be Everton against Brighton. This is one that if you're a bit busy and you're not going to see the whole game, skip the first half an hour because or maybe 15 minutes, because these two teams have scored 46 goals this season and only 2 of them have been in the first 15 minutes. So it's not going to be an electric start, I don't think. The last time these teams met was on the opening day of the season. It was Brighton 4, Everton 0. Kika Seka getting a hat-trick and Frank Kirby getting the other one. I think it was a penalty. So, yeah, a contrast to what it is now, because that was when Brighton were on really good form and Brighton were really good form and Everton were looking like a team potentially going down. And now it's basically the other way around. Brighton are the team that are struggling for form, but Everton are really in form. And when you're picking up a point away at Man City and things like that, that's a world away from losing 4-0 away to Brighton on the first game of the season. Jacob, how do you think this game's going to go? Because I'm a bit sort of up in the air about how this game is. I don't think Everton are going to be utterly dominant in this game. I think they're going to try their best, but they're not a team that goes out and scores 4 or 5 goals in a game generally. Brighton have it in them on their day, but don't tend to do it a lot. So I see this being quite low scoring.
Yeah, as I said, I've been looking at the form table of the last 8 games, which is essentially the second half of the season, and Everton are up there in 6th. So they've had a very impressive second half of the season, and I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that Brighton are down in 10th with only 5 points in their last 8 games. So that's 1 win, which was against Spurs, and 2 draws in their last 8 matches. Everton, I was looking at Everton's home record, and they've actually had a really good home record this season. They've only lost 3 games at home, and all of those losses have come against the top 3. So they've got a really strong record at home against the kind of lower sides in the table. And similarly, in terms of like goals and strengths, Brighton have only kept 1 clean sheet in their last 13 matches. So I was going to say that I probably would expect both teams to score, maybe leaning towards Everton based off form. So I'll go for like a 2-1 Everton win. But I think it'll be close.
So Jacob says the stats say goals. I say the vibes say no goals. Izzy, you are the deciding factor here.
I'm going vibes as well as instead of stats, but it's really giving 1-1 to me. So I'm gonna go draw 1-1.
Yeah, I can see a 1-1. And I think I've now taken any Everton and Brighton player out of my team. So to be honest, I don't care. Let's move on to Leicester Man City, the next game. Like you say, Chelsea and Palace, and then Palace West Ham could be a game that relegates Chelsea, but this could also be something that could help Chelsea out, because anything other than a win in this game for Man City, assuming Chelsea beat Palace, would mean that Chelsea are guaranteed to finish in the top 2. Arsenal are a bit closer to Chelsea than I thought they were. I think they're only 3 points behind now. Maybe 6 by the time you listen to this, listener. This fixture last season was pretty low scoring. It was only a 1-0 win for Man City away at Leicester. A goal by Chloe Kelly, who obviously isn't there anymore. But if we start looking at the numbers, it's a bit conflicting because all 4 of Leicester's WSL wins this season have been at home. We know that their home record has been a lot better than their away record. It's basically what's kept them up above the relegation spot this season. They've had sort of, I haven't checked off the top of my head, but I think it's something like 5th or 6th best home form in the league. But then they've never beaten Man City at home. So it's difficult to see where this is going to go. I feel like a Leicester team that are sort of have most of their players around. They haven't sort of had any injuries recently, not major ones. They've obviously still got some players out, things like Yutarantala and people like that. But they've generally, other than Ruby Mace, they've had most of their side pretty standard for the last few weeks. Man City are the other way around. They've had loads of injuries, a bit more turbulence, and obviously a newer manager. So weirdly, I think you look at this and say, oh, well, it's 11th hosting 4th. It's probably going to be an easy win for 4th place. But I think Man City will probably win this, but I think Leicester will make it quite difficult for them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see another 1-0 win for Man City, because I know Leicester are very good defensively. and yeah, they do have it in them to do these types of games. Izzy, how about you? Because
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what your thoughts are.
I think I'd agree with that. I don't see a Leicester win, but I don't think a draw is out of the question at all. City just seem really deflated, and obviously the news of Mary Fowler and her ACL has put a huge, obviously, shadow over the team, and like you mentioned earlier, like just all their best players are out for one reason or another. So yeah, I feel like it might be one where Leicester go full force and take the win because they think they can, while City are vulnerable. But to be honest, yeah, perhaps a draw or a slight City win is probably more likely.
Yeah, and then Jacob's going to come out with some data and say that we're both completely wrong.
Not quite. I've gone for a City win here as well. I also did note Leicester's strong home form, as you said before, Sam. They've won 4, drawn 2, and lost 3 out of their all their home games this season. Going back to the reverse fixture, City won 4-0. Bunny Shaw scored 2, Mary Fowler 1, and Jess Park scored 1. But obviously Bunny Shaw and Mary Fowler out through injury. With so many players out, especially their attacking players, there's so much threat there that's lost. But regardless of City's poor form and recent crash and injury crisis, I still foresee a City win. But I agree with what you both said in the fact that it could be more narrow than you would maybe expect.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that one. Let's see if that carries on to the next game. This one's Villa against Arsenal. This fixture last season was a 3-1 Arsenal win after Villa were 1-0 up at half-time. Arsenal had the much better of this matchup. They've won the last 4 meetings between these two, but they are the 2 informed team in the league. If you look at a form table of the last 2 games, these are the 2 informed teams. They're the only teams that have won their last 2. Arsenal obviously on a bit longer a winning streak with 7. This is a game that I think Villa will take a lot of positivity from the game at the weekend. Spurs weren't terrible. Let's say that. Villa were the better team, but Spurs weren't awful. Arsenal are going to be a bit of a different package to face, but yeah, Villa will have some confidence after scoring 3 goals away from home, and they're now at home in a relatively big fixture against a team that know that they probably need to rest some players ahead of next week's game. So I'm intrigued to see how this game goes. Jacob, what about you? Because you were the one that watched Villa on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Villa, as you said, Villa had 2 wins in a row now after losing 6 in a row before that. However, I think despite Villa's recent success, I foresee an Arsenal win. I think we've spoken a lot about Arsenal's free-flowing goal scoring, and I mean the stats don't lie. In Arsenal's last 7 WSL matches, they've scored 3+ goals in each one of them. So, and Villa also haven't kept a clean sheet since November. So I think all signs point towards a kind of resounding Arsenal win. However, the game does take place not this weekend, it's next midweek. So there may be a bit of a post-Champions League semi-final slump for Arsenal, depending on how that goes. It could be a hangover, or it could be a slump. Yeah, I see an Arsenal victory.
Yeah, Izzy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I don't think we can count Villa out when they're on a run of good form. And yeah, we know Arsenal's defence can be prone to being slightly sloppy. And when you've been playing a sort of defensively robust and very physical team like Lyon, sort of the weekend before away as well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few mistakes from them in the defence that could mean our Villa can slip one through. I mean, I think like if the 3-1 fixture beforehand is anything to go by, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that same scoreline again or something thereabouts.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one for some of the players at Arsenal that don't get quite as many minutes. I can see people like Steiner starting in this game because, it's only 3 days after the match away at Lyon to then go away. I know Birmingham's probably a bit closer than Lyon, but away to Villa is going to be difficult for an Arsenal team. And the players like Mariona and those that play pretty much all the time need a bit of rest. I think in Lyon, you're going to see Mariona, you're going to see Beth Mead, Caitlin Ford, Leslie Russo. Those sort of players need some rest. And I think when you're playing a team low down the table and let's be honest, you've pretty much secured second place already. Realistically, Chelsea have probably had a few good results before then as well and have sort of got back away, unless Palace are going to beat them tomorrow night. I think, if Rene's sensible, she'll make a bit of a rotation for this game. And I think it's going to be close, but Arsenal will still have enough because Arsenal's bench is still good enough to beat Villa. So I'm going to put it close. I'm going to put a 2-1 Arsenal win on that. The final game to touch on is the game that was quite a famous one last season. It's Man United against Chelsea. I say that this was the last game of the season last year. I don't know if anyone remembers, but it was one that we thought that might be a pretty close game. Man United had an all right end of the season. But no, Chelsea ran out 6-0 victors. It kind of ruined Mary Earps' last game for Manchester United. Picking the ball out of her net 6 times. Myra Ramirez scoring twice. Johanna Witting-Kanowitz, Jürgen Nusken, Melanie Leupold, and Fran Kirby. But United could have a bit more joy this time. If they win this game, regardless of other results, if they win this game, it would guarantee that City finish 4th, and obviously give Man United still a bit of hope that they could finish 2nd. But Man United are one of only 2 teams alongside Chelsea that's still unbeaten at home this season. This will be their biggest challenge yet. And I think that Barcelona and how tough they make it for Chelsea is going to really determine how well Manchester United are able to do in this game. Jacob, how about you? How do you sort of see this game going? Because I think Chelsea are going to go really hard against Barcelona. A lot of players are going to get a lot of minutes, and there's going to have to be a lot of rotation for this game. And then it's going to depend what players are available, because Chelsea haven't got that many players in the back line at the moment. Compared to what they normally do anyway. So I think this game could actually be quite close and potentially even a draw.
Yeah, I think it's really tough to call. Obviously, a massive game both for the top of the table, but also for the Champions League spots. I was having a look at the reverse fixture where Chelsea won 1-0 with a Guro-Wrighton penalty. From a United point of view, it was the lowest XG United accumulated all season with 0.2, and it was also the lowest possession United had all season with 37%. We've obviously been used to seeing United's strong defensive performances and also having scored quite a lot of goals this season. So to see them struggle earlier on in the season against Chelsea means that maybe they could struggle again here. Chelsea have scored in every WSL game this season, which is not even something Arsenal can match, and Arsenal are the league's top scorers. However, as we've known, and as I've said many times throughout this pod, United have such a strong defence. 13 clean sheets in 19 games, and if you look at the 6 games in which they didn't keep clean sheets, 4 of those 6 games, they only conceded 1 goal. One of those games, they conceded 2 goals, which was their 4-2 victory against City, and the only other game was their 3-1 loss against Liverpool. So I think it will be very tight considering the strength that both Chelsea and United have in defence. But it's a big match for Chelsea in the WSL, despite the fact that they have a Champions League semi-final only a few days before, especially because Arsenal played Villa earlier on. So if Arsenal do manage to beat Villa, there's some pressure that Arsenal can start to put on Chelsea there ahead of their game against United.
Yeah, Izzy, how about you?
Yeah, I think everything Jacob said is totally right. And I think it's going to be dependent. I think Chelsea will be tired, but I also do think, if Man United do take something from it, it won't be because Chelsea are tired. I think it will be dependent on whether they can get the ball to those players, like Jacob was saying earlier, like Jade Riviere and, Celine Bizet, Grace Clinton, to kind of get time on the ball and put those crosses in, or in Grace Clinton's case, knock one in from some obscene distance. I think if they can do that, I actually see them winning, or, I think it's going to be very close. But I think it is in United's hands if they kind of grasp it, essentially. But I don't think it's going to be a clean sheet for either team.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think Manchester United are one of not many teams in the world that can go into a game against Chelsea and say that if we play well, we're actually going to get something out of this game. I think you look at, good example is probably going to be Palace tomorrow night. I think they are probably going to go in saying, look, we're going to do our best, but this is Chelsea. Whereas Man United have the players and have the, not perfect, but decent structure to say, actually, we can get something out of this. But yeah, they are the matches that are coming up this weekend / the next midweek, because obviously Arsenal and Chelsea are playing their Champions League second legs at the weekend. But yeah, let's move on to our Fantasy WSL segment and, to our Fantasy WSL. I could just see Izzy's face lit up as she's opened the new tab on the laptop.
Yeah.
Take us through all the stats about Fantasy WSL.
Well, as I was saying to you before, Sam, we are actually mid-game week, given that we got the game tomorrow. So we don't have the usual team of the week and transfer stats. But I think it would be good to go over the sort of top players from the weekend's fixtures, because it's actually really nice to see some new names here. The top scorer of the weekend was actually Caitlin Ford, which is interesting because she's one of those players that's like really good in sort of games consistently, but she doesn't always get the most fantasy points. But she topped the table so far this week with 12. And then like about 5-6 players got 11 points. Karen Homeguard obviously is one of those, after she was assisted, which is a new thing I'm trying to clean, but I'm not doing it very well. But she was assisted by her sister, and she is also a visionary. There's lots of visionaries this week. Ebony Salmon, Jacob, you'll be pleased to hear, also got 11 points. Eva Nystrom, Shalina Zadorsky, and Amber Tiziak as well. So there's a lot of West Ham defensive representation. Ella Morris and Jess Naz on 10 and 9 points respectively. Ella Morris is a visionary as well. So that's been really nice to see. I mean, we've got Maya Letitia and Kirsten Kasper as our kind of fixture Fantasy WSL scorers at this point. But yeah, I think this could be an interesting one, especially if Chelsea put out a slightly different squad tomorrow. We could see some more new name scorers.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what squad Chelsea put out, because at the moment I've got 10 players that have played, and I'm doing all right. I've got 40 points. The average is 22, so I'm happy with that so far. Only half of the person that's got 82 so far this week, but they played the Wolves, so I'm not comparing myself to them. But I've got Millie Bright as my last player, but obviously she might not play because of the Champions League game. So I've got Mikato that's going to come on instead, who I'm not certain is going to get loads of points away at Chelsea, but
I've captained Aggie Beaver-Jones, so that potentially could work out really well. Or I don't know how Sonia's going to call that one, because obviously she started in the fixture at Barcelona. So yeah, who knows? But
who's your vice captain?
My vice captain that's actually a really good question. I will check. I hope it's not Elizabeth Turlin, because I know she was definitely in my team. And she did not do well. She only got 2 points, I think. 2 points?
So I captained Mariona Caldente this week, because I was thinking she will play because Renee plays her all the time. I thought at home against Leicester, Arsenal ended up scoring 5 goals. Great. Didn't really clock throughout how many points she would have got. So I checked it after, and it's her 2 points are doubled to 4, and I'm like, yeah, great.
I actually had an amazing moment at the Emirates. It was a very quiet game. There were only 5,000 people there, and just like halfway through the match, it was just like no one was really. The mutter from the crowd had gone down because it was a bit boring, and someone just shouted, "Come on, Mario, no, I've got fantasy points on this." And I just thought, yeah.
I bet that's so nice to sort of see it in the wild, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually it happens pretty much every time we go now to an Emirates game, or maybe at Stamford Bridge as well. We've seen it happen, but more often than not, obviously, Emirates gets larger crowds. So, yeah, no one's ever shouted out before. But yes, we have seen people like anxiously refreshing points in the wild. I've vice captain Beth Mead actually, so now I'm praying Aggie Beaver Jones doesn't play because Beth got 11 this weekend. So
I'll be making a note when Sonia subs Aggie Jones on the 88th minute for 5 minutes at the end of the game.
you just never hear from me again.
I'll just know that somewhere Izzy is crying.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you for that this week because yeah, I know, like you said, it's sort of mid-game week, so it's kind of hard to get any stats out of it. But next week when we come to you, planning to record on Thursday night, so that'll be after the midweek games as well. And yeah, fingers crossed we'll have plenty more to talk over. But let's move on to the pods game. Let's get to know your stat. So you two might not know this, but well, it was kind of spoken last time we played, obviously with Tom as well, that there might be some history made today because, well, you two have both won one match of Know Your Stat, so someone is going to be the first person ever to win two. There's also, as well, you two have both won like 3 rounds in Know Your Stat, but no one has ever won 5. So one of you is going to be the first person to do that as well. And also, you're both tied second on the most correct answers with 30.
Oh, that's
One
a good
person's
start.
got
No, I was about
39,
to
so
say-
if you can overtake Freya.
This doesn't match my like perception of how well I've done on this game, so I'm quite liking these stats. Can we do Know Your Stat about these stats?
Yeah. Maybe I'll do that one day when we've done loads of episodes. But yeah, we've got 3 rounds today. Obviously, just a 1v1. We'll start with, well, I don't know who to start with actually, because normally I'd start with, maybe someone that hasn't won as many or something like that. We'll start with Jacob's. Jacob has only played 2 matches to Izzy's 3. So Jacob can go first on the first round. The first round, I thought that as we've had a bit of Champions League football this week, I'd go for some sort of Champions League based round. So this one is, I would like you to name for me any player that has scored for an English team in the Women's Champions League this season. So this is anything from the group stage onwards. So any of the qualifying games that Arsenal, Man City played don't count. But yeah, anyone that's scored for Arsenal, Chelsea or Man City in either the group stage or the knockouts this season. Jacob to go first.
Sondi Baltimore.
Yeah, she's scored twice, including, obviously, the one against Barcelona.
Viviana Miedemar.
Yeah, she's also got 2.
Mariona Caldente.
Yeah, she's got 6 goals. I didn't clock that she'd scored that many.
Alessia Russo.
Yeah, she is joint with 6. No one else has got more than 3.
Mary Fowler.
Mary Fowler's got 1.
Bunny Shaw.
Bunny Shaw is an incorrect answer. No, I'm joking. Of course she's not. She's got 3.
Don't do that.
Joanna Ritten-Cannered.
Hannah Ritchie actually is an incorrect answer, unfortunately.
No way.
So that means that Izzy can win it if she can give me a correct answer here.
I've completely blanked on like every game I've ever watched. I'm going to say Guro Reiten.
Gira Reiten has 2, so it is a correct answer, and Izzy takes the first round. You've managed to get 7 of the 31 players on the list. I'll give you the others that you could have had. So you could have had Aggie Beaver-Jones, Alana Kennedy, Alba Fagino, Ashley Lawrence, Caitlin Ford, Kat Macario, Emily Fox, Erin Cuthbert, Eve Perisset, who I forgot was on that list, Frida Marnham, Kirsten Kasparai, Laia Cadena, Laura Billen-Kidwell-Brown, Lily Murphy, Lena Hurtig, Lucy Bronze, Micah Hamano, Myra Ramirez, Naomi Lazelle, Natalie Bjorn, Oriane Jean-Francois, Sjurka Nusken, Stina Blackstenius, and Vika Kaptein. Izzy takes the first round. We'll move on to round number 2. Izzy, you're going to start on this one. I would like you to name for me the 22 players that have committed the most fouls in the WSL this season. So this is players that have committed at least 18 fouls. There are 22 on the list. Izzy, to go first.
I'm going to go with Katie McCabe.
Katie McCabe is on 21, so just about.
Millie Bright.
Millie Bright is an incorrect answer, so it's a very quick 1-0 victory for Izzy.
No.
Oh.
Millie Bright is, I'm just scrolling down to find her. She has had 16, so she's not far off, but unfortunately an incorrect answer. So Izzy takes, round 2 and takes the match.
That's gutting.
First person to win twice. There were, obviously, like I said, 22 people on the list, so I'll read out the people that you could have had. Were Lexi Potter, Ash Neville, Caitlin Ford, Celine Bazette, Kerry Holland, Dom Yankton, Drew Spence, Elizabeth Turland was third on the list. I was surprised at that. Gabby George, Grace Clinton, Heather Payne, Julie Thibault, Katrina Gorry, Madison Haley, Michelle Agniang, Nikita Paris, Noel Moritz, Olivia Smith, Ruby Mace had the most, Sarah Holmgard, and Viviane Asayi. They were the names you missed out. But we'll play the third round anyways. Even though Izzy has won the match, Jacob, we'll see if you can get one back rather than a whitewash. The third and final round is going to be players that have won more than 20 aerial duels in the WSL this season. So there are 32 players on the list. It doesn't matter how many they've lost, just the ones that have won more than 20. Jacob, to go first.
I'm going to try my luck with Millie Bright again.
Millie Bright is third on the list. She's had 40.
Leah Williamson.
Yeah, Leah Williamson is just about. She's on 21. So literally the lowest you could have had.
Maya Letitia.
Maya Letitia is on 36. Correct answer.
I'm going to go with Alessia Russo.
Alessia Russo is an incorrect answer. So Jacob takes it. Alessia Russo has had 20.
I thought I'd try my luck since I already had it in the bag.
It's a poor standard of Know Your Stat this week, I will say. So
over the course of 3 rounds between you've had 11 correct answers. It's not been the highest level of quality, but it is a 2-1 victory for Izzy. I'll give you the names that you could have had on that final round. So players that have won more than 20 aerial duels. You could have had Amber Tiziak, Anna Patton, Ash Neville again, Beth England, Claire Hunt, Dominic Janssen, Elizabeth Turland, Gabby Nunes, Gabby George, Gemma Bonner, Guro Bergsvan, Jasmine Matthews, Justin Van Havermate, Katie Stengel, Bunny Shaw, Leah Alexandri, Leah Galton, surprisingly on that list, Lucy Bronze, Madison Haley, Megan Finnegan, Millie Turner, Natalie Bjorn, Nikita Paris, Rachel Daly, Rico Recchi, Sarah Holmgard, Sjoka Nusken, Sophie Howard, and the number one person on the list, way above anyone else, was Sophie Roman Haug.
That's rogue. Like, I don't know why. I wouldn't expect that.
I think generally it's a lot of tall centre backs and a few tall forwards.
Yeah, just tall people.
Just tall people. I don't think Alessia Russo is a bad shout. She's played quite a lot of games. I think she's.
I was just trying to remember who I've seen do a lot of jumping, to be honest.
Well, Alessia Russo was as close to correct as you can be without being correct. She was obviously on exactly 20.
Thank you.
But it is a 2-1 victory for Izzy today. First person to win 2 matches of Know Your Stat of the, I think, how many we had? 12 people that have played it.
Oh, wow. I feel very
only one that's won 2.
Thank you.
The only one that's won 2 so far, anyway. We'll see what comes in future weeks. But yeah, thank you both for coming on. And something that I forgot to mention at the top of the show as well, but this is the 50th episode of Decoding the WSL. I didn't know how Decoding the WSL was going to go when I first started it. I didn't have any regular guests on the show. I didn't really know exactly what sort of format. If you listen to some of the earlier ones, they're a bit haphazard. They're not quite as regimented as they are now, and sort of free-flowing, and I don't think the sound quality is quite there and things like that. But I like to think in the last 8 months it's come quite far. Thank you, listener, for coming with us, because if you weren't here, it'd just be me inviting people on to talk to me rather than to talk to anyone else. Thank you, listener, throughout, and hopefully you'll be be with us over the summer and next year as we keep going, because I'm not stopping at 50. I've got a few ideas for things to do over the summer. Probably more know your stat, if nothing else, over the summer. But there's obviously the Women's Euros to come up, and getting ready for next season as well. As well as a few other ideas I've got in the pipeline. Might have a bit of video content as well. But yeah, 50 down. Let's see what the next 50 looks like. Let's see what we're looking at episode 100. See if you two are still here. Thank you, Izzy, and thank you, Jacob, for coming on today. Jacob, I did this last time as well. I just gave you a chance to plug and no one else. But I know you've changed your handle recently, so I just wanted to let everyone know how they can find you now.
Yeah, I've gone for a massive rebrand. No, I just changed my handle to make it more personal. So my handle is now at Jacob Bern 14. That's Jacob and then BERN 14. So yeah, follow me there on X. For more WSL content.
Now people know it's you and not just Mike Oros.
Exactly. You might have thought I was Mike Oros.
Yeah, she's a massive stats head, actually.
Yeah. Izzy, I assume you're the same in Fantasy WSL and NWSL. I've got the same handles still. We don't need to do any other changes.
No rebrands just yet. So yeah, we're all good. Nothing to plug. Just keep playing our game and having a good day, I guess.
Do keep playing the game. I would like to say as well, another week of Fantasy NWSL has gone by, and I'm still above average every week, which I'm very happy with. I was on 52 points this week, above the average of 36. So for someone, that doesn't really know the league, I'm well happy with that.
I think I'm taking the time towards the end of this season to really invest in the NWSL, because I've just had too much going on to kind of be able to do both. But I've been sort of literally bang on average each time, like distinctly just like mid, and I need to sort of step up my game. So yeah, come sort of the end of the season, things start quieting down before we hit Euros, I'm going to be there. So watch me. Second half of Fantasy NWSL, Second Chance League, I'm going to be number one.
As I say, you're going to be skyrocketing up the leaderboards. Whereas I'm the absolute opposite on Fantasy NWSL. I did really well at the start of the season. On the Second Chance League, I'm awful. But there we go. As I've mentioned before, I'm basically like Brighton when it comes to fantasy. But yeah, thank you both for coming on the pod for the 50th episode. Thank you, listener, as ever, for tuning in to Decoding the WSL. As ever, if you enjoyed the episode, do make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you can get your podcasts, and do give a 5-star review as well. You know where to follow us all. I won't bother going through all that every time. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you at the next one.